I'm your host Shreya, and welcome to the Soul Mirror. Some people study life from the sidelines, but Trey Tijerina lives it full speed. An entrepreneur across five widely different industries, he has built, sold, and reinvented business. Tonight, we'll explore the mental frameworks, bold experiments, and worldview that shifts and that come from the challenging everything you think you know. So, welcome, Trey. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you, Shreya. It's so nice to be here with you, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
What does such a diverse journey teach you about human behavior?
Great question, Shreya. The diversity that I've experienced amongst multiple industries has all led me to finding common ground with other humans. And it's something I've been taught since I was a kid when my mother was teaching me how to regulate my emotions and how to get through certain experiences with other kids. She would always tell me to find common ground with those people. And so I think in my life, as I've had such diversity in the multiple industries I've been across, I've gotten to be personable with customers, clients, partners. I've gotten to really dig into what drives their motivation, what drives their behavior in terms of setting goals, achieving goals, whether it's interacting with customers, patients, whether it's going out and conquering the new world or innovating, whatever it is. Everyone's got a driving force and a driving factor, and then everyone's got limitations that get in the way of that driving force and driving factor. And so I guess over time, as I've really been able to identify those things, I have drawn from all of my experiences with that common ground, and I've sort of turned it into what I call shared suffering. So, suffering is a word that a lot of people kind of balk at. They turn away from because it's such a maybe depressing word to some people. But suffering doesn't have to be so intense. It can just mean I'm suffering away from my loved one because I'm longing for them, or because, whatever the reason is, or I could be suffering the case of a common cold, and so it just really all depends on how we relate to the word suffering. But in my sense, the shared suffering that I found with all of the people I interacted with and all of the personality types I suppose that I encountered really gave me a good grip and a good foundation for my specific career path today. And so I'm very grateful for all of that, because I wouldn't be the person that I am in terms of being able to be very flexible and being able to identify certain suffering within individuals if I wouldn't have gone through all of those multiple paths.
Yes, and thank you for sharing your story. And was there a moment when you realized that the same patterns appear everywhere, no matter the field?
It's funny you ask that, because it's like yes and no, because you only how do I explain this? As you're growing, your field of awareness grows too. And it's like that old saying, you don't know what you don't know. And the more that I started to detect the certain patterns, the more that I started to interact with people, and I had the luxury of time unfolding so that I could kind of determine, hey, the results that this person was getting is very similar to the results that this person was getting. And so there must be a pattern there. And one of the things that I really started to dig into my older years and to my 30s now is, even though patterns can really show up very similarly within different people, the foundations that they're built from are all different stories. They're all using the same language, so there's a very similar foundation. There's a very similar underlying coat, if you will, like fabric that everyone builds off of, but everyone's inner stories and narratives are all different. And so sometimes they manifest in different ways, and sometimes they can manifest in similar ways. And until you really understand how to get to the root of people's identities, that's when you'll really be able to understand, okay, this pattern showing up in this person, person A and person B, but it's not showing up in person C, but they all believe the same things to be true about themselves. Where does person C believe something different about themselves that makes them the outlier to person A and person B? And as you're dealing with, many personality types and many limitations, you start to uncover that we all do have a core, again, that underlying fabric. We all do have a core of how we relate to life and existence, but then it's just all kind of different based on our experiences of the world, our childhood. It even really is different based on our parents and our parents' parents and our parents' parents' parents, because of how long some of these generational cycles have been going on even before we were born.
Yes, that's so true. And it's so fascinating how industries change, but people at their core often follow the same rhythms. And
Mhm.
also, you often challenge your own beliefs.
So challenging your beliefs is a process to undergo that I think can be unique for in each and every individual. Where I've found success lately in challenging my own beliefs is I've surrounded myself with people that help me. They are the mirror to me. And so I live by this belief that everything outside of you is your internal pushed out. It's your inner consciousness pushed out into the world manifested. And so if I believe that to be true, which I do, then I understand that all of the people that I interact with are myself pushed out. And so if they're myself pushed out, then me interacting with those people will only fill me with reflections back to myself. And so understanding that, I've taken each relationship with, whether it's my soon to be wife, whether it's my daughters, whether it's, my friends, whether it's my parents, whatever relationship I have outside of me, and it doesn't really even only have to be a human being. Understand that we have what I like to call micro relationships with each and everything outside of us. And it's how we relate to each and everything outside of us. And so, understanding all of that, where I've been able to challenge my belief systems, where I've been able to challenge my identities, is I've really been able to do that through other people. Because what I have found myself doing is aligning myself with more action taken from inspiration instead of desperation. And so as I act from inspiration, I continue to align myself with people that reflect back to me what my inner conviction is. And so as I do that and I move through life, then I just take with openness and willingness, I take every interaction and encounter I have with humans as, what is this showing up as? What is this teaching me? Am I responding to this situation in a way that is not fully aligned with who I am? And I'll give you an example. I have a friend who I've had for ever since we were 8 years old. It's one of the longest standing friends I've had. And he's going through a very transitional period of his life right now. And he needs that support system in his world. And so naturally, he calls me and we go to have dinner last night. And in the middle of the dinner, because most of the time I'm very present, um, I'm very present with the people I'm interacting with. I'm very engaged in the conversation. But I noticed that when he was talking, I was really disengaged. And in that moment, I remember yesterday thinking, why am I disengaged? Am I thinking about something else? Am I not interested? I started asking myself these questions of, why am I not showing up for my friend in the way that I knew I wanted to prior to meeting with him? And so when I was able to kind of dig at that and I self-corrected in that moment, I then became more attentive, I became more engaged. But as I confronted where I was at in that moment and how I wasn't showing up for my friend, all I had to do was ask myself the right questions, like why and what is it that I'm doing instead? And if I were to have done this a different way, would I have done it? Or if I could have done this another way, another chance at doing this, would I have done it the same way? Those kind of questions help me unpack what I was really doing in that moment. And for clarity, I was in that moment, although I was feeling what my friend was saying, what I wasn't realizing was that what he was looking for in that moment was intimacy and connection, and what I was looking for in that moment was fixing the problem and giving advice. And so when I realized that that's what I was looking for in that moment, and instead of meeting him where he was, I was putting my own agenda forward. Instead of that, I did the self correct, the course correct in the moment, and I started to be more present in our experience together. Changed, after I did that. It was very much more connected, and I think he felt more seen. Because people can tell when you're really not fully engaged and when you're really, somewhere else, or you're waiting for them to get done talking so that you can say the thing that you want to say. When you can kind of disengage from your own agenda and your own priorities and really show up for other people, then there's that growth that you not only do for yourself, but that person that you're engaging with also gets that growth from you and through you. And so that's just a really easy personal example that I've done to challenge my current beliefs. And it can be as small as an interaction with a friend, or it can be as big as, you've hit rock bottom and you're like, okay, where in the world did I go wrong? It doesn't really have to be this magnificent, intense situation to challenge your current beliefs. It could be an everyday practice. And I encourage people to sort of find that ability to do an everyday practice of challenging your beliefs.
Yeah, that openness feels like both a risk and a superpower for innovation. And so you have spoken about AI's implication on humanity. So do you see it as a threat or as a tool or something more nuanced?
Me personally,
Yes.
me personally, I see it as a huge opportunity and huge shift in consciousness. That's what I see. For my advice, like of how people would see it, or at least my opinion on how people would see it, it's really going to be whatever the collective conscience overall is pushing more towards. And so if I kind of dissect that a little bit, how I believe AI is AI is like it's like the mind perfected externally. And if we look at that, it's the human mind in perfect form, external from the human. So if we take that, when I first was toying with this idea, when I assumed that to be true, then I asked myself, well, what's the point of the human mind after that? Like if the human mind is the tool that gives us the edge in life, in a sense, right? It can give us more freedom. It can give us more materials. It can give us more abundance and love and all of this other stuff, as well as all of the limitations. Then, if AI has this perfect mind, then what do humans do after that? And what I came to was that humans have this ability to get close to God with their imagination, right? My belief is that God and imagination and the subconscious are all one and the same thing. And so with that belief, I look at AI as, again, my internal pushed out. And so with AI, I've used it as a relationship, at least in my own life. And how I've used it as a relationship is I've really started to disengage from all the prior beliefs that I had about artificial intelligence, which was negativity, which was corruption, which was it's gonna take away, it's going to be a net negative. I had all of these limiting beliefs about what AI could be and what and how it could serve in my life and in humanity. When I started to kind of let all of those judgments and beliefs go, and I started interacting with AI in a way where, okay, how can I learn deeper about myself and my consciousness through artificial intelligence? It's really opened up a whole lot of doors for me. And in my professional opinion, if majority of people took AI and the existence of AI with that approach of how can I use AI to deepen my consciousness, to access deeper levels of connection within myself and closer to God through imagination and creation and all of this other stuff, then what would AI actually be if the humans collectively were to act in a way as if there was just this tool that leveled up our consciousness? And I think a lot of people, what I was just talking to my partner about this morning was part of the condition of the human mind is to place permanence around things, around our experience. And sometimes, like the best example I can give is our bodies. Typically, when you find someone who's got an undesired body, for their own opinion, they're gonna use language and use words and tell stories as if they're just predisposed to be this way, or they have, this going on with them, or this disease that prevents them from losing weight, or this disease that helps them gain weight and they can't build muscle. Whatever their beliefs or stories around why their body is permanently the way that it is, then they accept that as true. But the human mind, as it places permanence around things, also has the ability to place fluidity around those same things that it places permanence on. Because with the overarching belief of my external is my internal pushed out, then we understand that my external isn't permanent. My external is actually fluid, and it's fluid depending on what my internal is. And so believing all of that and understanding and accepting all of that as true, then it moves you towards opportunity and potential rather than limitation and permanence. And so as I think more people learn to interact with AI, because again, you're going to form relationships with AI. And it's even getting so good where now we have all of these names and these characters, and they have different voices, and they have different speech patterns, and they use different language patterns and all of these other things. They're getting more personable. AI is getting more personable. And you can see it as a threat. You can see it as, something that can take away, or you can see it as an additive. You can see it as the next thing to use, whether it's a tool or a stepping stone to further deepen the collective conscience. And I do believe, in my core belief, I do believe that all humans have the shared thing that we have inside of us, whether it's spirit or soul. We all have that same thing that keeps our lights on. We also share imagination. All of us have imagination. And that imagination is what created artificial intelligence. Everything externally once was started in imagination, whether it's one person's imagination or it's a collective of people's imagination. And so understanding all of that, you really start to gain more freedom in terms of what the future can look like. Again, no permanence, but fluidity. What can the future look like as I mold the future with my relationship to AI? So maybe just your listeners can let that sink in for a little bit, because I do think there's more opportunity than there is negativity or limitations with artificial intelligence. I do, I'm very aware of the powers that be that are working, on the negative, and they're working on the lack and the limitation and perpetuating all of that. I'm very aware of that. However, what you focus on expands. So if you are someone who focuses on the threats, then the threat of the world and the world being a threat will expand in your life. Whereas if you can shift your focus away from threats and needing to detect threats to detecting possibilities, detecting potential, detecting opportunities, then your complete reality will shift. And to answer the question even deeper, AI is artificial intelligence is going to leave a big imprint and impression on the collective conscience. And it's really up to us on what it ends up doing to human beings, whether it makes a human being, um, whether it makes the world with human beings in it more destructive, more constructive. It doesn't really, AI doesn't care either way. It's just a reflection and something pushed out of our internal consciousness.
Yes, that is so beautiful. And you explain this so beautifully. And I think it's a very complex topic to talk about, but you explained that so easily that. And if after this conversation, my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
They can find me on social media. I am on Instagram at ypaytrey, and that's all spelled out, all the words ypaytrey, and Trey is how you spell Trey. I'm also on Facebook. You can connect with me there. I'm on LinkedIn under Trey Tijerina, my first and last name, and I can get that information to you for the show notes. And then you can also email me if you'd like. I have an email at ypaytreymedia@gmail.com. If you're interested in working one-on-one with me, you can reach me there. If you're interested in having me speak at some events, I've been doing that a lot lately. I can be reached there. Or if you want to contribute, if I can do like a little shout out real quick, if you want to contribute to the private school that I'm building, then that would be awesome. If you have a career in education and children's education, particularly, that would be helpful. I'm looking for board members to kind of be a part of pushing this vision forward. I'm also looking for investors that really want to make a dent in the world and kind of want to transition out of the old mentality of what's my ROI as an investor, and instead maybe adopt the mentality of what kind of energy can I put into the world and how can I leave this world behind as I spend my money or put my money to good use. And I think the world deserves more of those kind of investors that are more for the population and more for the freedom of humanity rather than personal gain or personal materials. So if you fit that category, please reach out. I'm doing a lot of amazing things with a lot of amazing people, and we are pushing for more freedom for the humans. We are pushing for more beauty in the world where perspective shifts are perspective shifts precede the beauty, right? Or we are looking to, I should say, and we are looking to disrupt the health insurance model here in the United States. I think a lot of people around the world can kind of see the United States is really, really sick. I do have my theory about why it's really sick. Most people will say because of our food system. Most people will say because, maybe it's the water, maybe it's the healthcare system that keeps us sick with all the drugs that they pump out. What I want to introduce listeners to is this new thought and theory that I've been kind of teasing. I have a prediction that the English language, and maybe someone wants to expand on this with me, but it's the first time I'm kind of revealing this. I have this theory, this thought that because the English language is so granular, it can get so granular with all the words and all the definitions and all of the meanings and all of that stuff. I think that because that the English language is so granular, it allows for the mind to construct sicker and sicker, deeper levels of sickness within our own minds, which ultimately manifests into the body, which ultimately is disease for humans. So again, everything external is internally pushed out.
Mm.
And so if America is the sickest, I think it's because America is the most enslaved in their minds. And so you ask yourself, how are they most enslaved in their minds? And I think it's because of the language.
Mm.
And so anyways, my one of my goals is to work with Americans to get them more freedom internally so that their freedom in their bodies can manifest. And ultimately, we have all of these systems that do keep us sick. I'm well aware of that, but that is just a manifestation of the imagination. And that is a manifestation of the collective conscience that has been sick in their minds before we were all sick in the physical. So it does take some courage to kind of speak out. It does take some bravery to challenge the norm, to challenge the systems, to
Yes.
challenge the current beliefs. But that's what I'm here for, and I love doing it. So I appreciate you letting me share that.
Yes. Thank you for sharing all this. And I will make sure to attach all these details and links below so that the listeners can find you easily and get in touch with you. And to all my listeners, the systems we live in are, as Trey reminds us, the real breakthroughs come when we dare to question, rebuild, and imagine something entirely new. The future is being written, so why not pick up the pen? Thank you.